The throne hall smells like cold iron and burning cedar, and the scent clings to the back of my throat like a warning I should have heeded years ago. I press my shoulders into the stone pillar at the very rear of the chamber, trying to merge with it, trying to become part of the wall instead of a girl in a plain gray dress. The fabric scratches my skin in all the places. I had to patch it with mismatched scraps, pieces the noble women threw away without a second glance. Their laughter rings off marble and glass, bright and sharp, as they glide toward the front in gowns that catch the torchlight like spilled jewels. They are here to be seen. I am here because attendance is mandatory. Omega Vivienne Solara, the council once pronounced. Weak, unstable, unfit for breeding. The memory scrapes along my bones like claws. That verdict cost my family their last hope of clawing out of the mud. It cost my mother the light in her eyes and my father the straightness of his shoulders. It cost me the right to dream about mates, pups, or anything more than surviving one day at a time. A bell tolls. The sound rolls through the hall in heavy waves, and conversations snap shut mid-sentence. The rustle of silk and the faint clink of jewelry fall into a silence so complete I can hear my own pulse pounding in my ears. He enters. Alpha King Severin Draymore does not simply walk into a room. The room rearranges itself around him. Shadows cling to his black uniform as if the darkness itself has chosen him. Broad shoulders, long, lethal stride, pale eyes that seem carved from winter, he looks like every story we were told as children about kings and monsters, except no one ever explained what to do when they turn out to be the same person. His gaze drags across the crowd, and wolves straighten unconsciously in his path, as if bracing for impact. He is a predator sorting prey from threat. I drop my gaze to the polished floor, tracing the warped reflection of my boots in the stone. He will not see me. He never has. Men like him do not look at girls like me. That is the one constant in a life built on shifting ground. Step forward. His voice cuts through the silence, low and lethal. Vivienne Solara. My heart stops. For a breath, I am convinced I misheard him. The name hangs in the air, heavy and undeniable. Heads begin to turn, first in confusion, then with dawning curiosity, then with open contempt as eyes scan the room for the Omega foolish enough to share that name. The rejected Omega has just been summoned by the Alpha King. Someone behind me mutters, "He can't mean her." The words are a hiss against the skin of my neck, hot and incredulous. "Vivienne Solara," the herald repeats, louder this time, his tone sharp with impatience. "Step forward before your king." My legs are numb. That would be a blessing if they didn't need to move. For a heartbeat, every instinct I possess shrieks at me to run, to bolt through the nearest side door, to disappear into the maze of corridors, and never look back. But I learned a long time ago what happens to Omegas who disobey orders. I've seen the bruises. I've smelled the blood. So I push off the pillar. The crowd parts for me slowly, like they're reluctant to let me stain their air. Perfume and power press against my skin as I slip between gowns worth more than everything my family has owned in 3 generations. A beta female sneers openly as I pass, her lips curling as her gaze catches on the fraying hem of my dress. "This has to be a mistake," someone whispers. "It's an insult," another voice snaps. "After all our daughters have done to prepare." I keep my eyes on the floor. One foot, then the other. The distance between the last row and the dais has never looked so long. The hall is too quiet, the silence broken only by the hard echo of my boots on stone. Each step feels like it belongs to someone else, some other foolish girl walking to her execution. When I finally reach the foot of the dais, I force my knees to bend. The movement is clumsy, unfamiliar. We don't practice court bows in the slums. I clasp my shaking hands in front of me and bow my head until the world narrows to the sight of Severin's boots. Polished black leather, flecked with ash, and something darker I don't want to name. "Raise your head," he says. The command isn't loud, but it leaves no space for refusal. My chin lifts slowly, as if pulled by an invisible string. I trace the line of his legs, the strong, solid stance, the dark fabric stretched over muscle and authority up to the broad plane of his chest, the silver clasp at his throat shaped like a wolf's head. Finally, I meet his eyes. Up close, they are not just pale, they are almost colorless, like ice just before it cracks. For a moment, he studies me so intently I forget how to breathe. I expect to see contempt there, or amusement, or bored cruelty. Instead, I see calculation, and something like recognition. This is absurd, Your Majesty, Elder Kalen says from Severin's right. His voice is smooth, practiced. The same tone he used the day he told me I was unfit to carry life. This girl has already been evaluated and dismissed. Her womb is an unacceptable risk for... Severin doesn't look at him. I did not ask for your assessment. The elder falls silent, teeth clicking shut. My pulse roars in my ears. Your Majesty. I manage. My voice rough, too soft for a hall this big. If I have offended you in some way, I assure you, you haven't offended me, Severin interrupts, still watching my face with that unnerving stillness. You've survived me. I blink. That makes no sense. He steps down one shallow stair, closing the distance between us. He is taller up close than he looks from the back of the hall, the air heavier around him. His scent brushes against my senses, pine, steel, and something electric underneath that makes my wolf rear up in a mixture of fear and reluctant fascination. The council declared you weak, he says, voice pitched low enough that only those closest can hear. Yet you pulled 3 pups from a burning tenement last winter when every ranked wolf on patrol fled the collapsing roof. Heat scorches my cheeks. There was no time to wait. They would have died. Precisely. His gaze doesn't waver. You didn't hesitate. That was instinct. And I was punished for it later, but I don't say that part aloud. Around us, the nobles shift uneasily. They don't like that he knows the stories from the slums. They don't like that he speaks to me as if my actions matter. Severin turns his head just enough for his voice to carry. From this night forward, he announces, Vivian Solara will reside in the Alpha's fortress under my protection. A gasp ripples through the hall, followed by an urgent hiss of whispers. Elder Kalen recovers first. Your Majesty, with respect, she is documented as barren. Choosing her jeopardizes the future of... Severin's power slams into the room like a storm front, an invisible pressure that squeezes my lungs. Did you mistake my words for a request, Elder? Kalen pales. Severin looks back at me. In his eyes there is steel and fire and something else I can't name. You will come with me, he says. You will bear my child. There it is. The blow I'd been bracing for without knowing its shape. My stomach lurches. Your Majesty, I whisper, throat tight. The council said that I can't. I am aware of what the council said. His tone cools, hardens. They have been wrong before. You risk the succession. Kalen tries again, desperation bleeding through the polish now. When there are so many proven, fertile candidates, Severin turns fully to face the gathered wolves, his voice slicing through the room like a blade. For years, you have paraded daughters and nieces and carefully groomed princesses before me as if I were selecting a horse for auction. Not one of them lifted a finger when the lower quarters burned. Not one stepped between my guards and an omega they beat for spilling wine. Silence crashes down. I will not give my heir to a mother who sees lives as expendable, he continues. I choose Vivian Solara. That is the end of this discussion. My knees feel hollow. The world tilts. My entire life has been about staying unnoticed, staying small. Now every eye in the hall is on me, heavy with hatred, envy, disbelief. Do you refuse? He asks quietly, too softly for anyone else to hear. I look up at him, at the man who just painted a target the size of the moon on my back, at the man who knows about a fire I thought the palace had forgotten. Refuse, a small voice in my mind begs. Go back to your crumbling room, back to your sick mother and leaking roof, back to a life that is suffocating but familiar. But I see my mother's thin hands, the way she shakes after long days. I see my father's eyes, dulled by too many disappointments. I see the pups in the tenement, coughing soot and clinging to me with terrified hands. If I walk away now, nothing changes. For them, for me, for anyone like me. My mouth is dry. No, Your Majesty, I whisper. I do not refuse. Something shifts in his gaze, subtle as a blink, gone as soon as it appears. Severin extends his hand. I stare at it, at the long fingers, the faint scars across his knuckles. Taking it feels like stepping off a cliff. Not taking it feels like stepping back into a grave that was dug for me years ago. I place my hand in his. His warmth closes around my fingers, solid and unyielding. A shiver tears through me. Not the mate bond, nothing so neat or fairy tale as that, but something raw and electric, a recognition in the deepest, loneliest part of me. The ceremony is concluded, he says, still holding my hand. Vivienne Solara is under my protection. Any who question her, question me. He turns, drawing me up onto the dais beside him, and for the first time in my life, I stand above the pack instead of beneath it. Their stares could flay flesh from bone. Their hatred is a physical thing. I swallow hard and lift my chin anyway. I am the rejected Omega, and I have just been ordered to bear the Alpha King's child. The walk from the throne hall to the fortress blurs into a smear of stone and torchlight and the dull roar of blood in my ears. I'm only half aware of the guards falling into formation around us, of the way the nobles shrink back as Severin passes, pulling their silks away as if power might stain. His hand never leaves mine, his grip firm but not crushing, a tether that feels too real to belong to this nightmare. By the time we step through the heavy iron doors of the Alpha's residence, my legs are trembling. The air inside is cooler, quieter, smelling faintly of old wood, leather, and the ghost of past fires. The hall here is narrower, lined with portraits of kings whose eyes follow us down the corridor, all sharp jawlines and hard mouths, a parade of men who look like Severin in different eras. We stop before a door reinforced with black metal bands. He releases my hand to push it open. Inside, he says. My feet obey before my mind catches up. The room beyond is a study, not a dungeon, though my pulse doesn't seem to understand the difference. Floor to ceiling, shelves loaded with books and scrolls, a massive desk buried under maps and papers, a large window overlooking the dark sprawl of the pack grounds. There's even a fire in the grate, throwing a low orange glow over everything. The door shuts behind us with a solid thud that vibrates through my spine. I turn automatically, half expecting to see a wall of guards. It's just him. Sit, Vivienne. He gestures toward a chair opposite the desk. I don't move. My body is caught between fight and flight, both useless here. Your Majesty, if this is a joke, it's a cruel one. I manage. My voice sounds thin in the big room. The council already decided what I am. You heard them. You risk. I'm very tired of being told what I risk. He cuts in, crossing the room with measured steps. Sit. The word hums with command. My knees give in, dropping me into the chair before pride can argue. He circles behind the desk and leans his palms on the wood, studying me like I'm one of the maps spread before him. I try not to squirm, try not to pick at the frayed seam on my sleeve. The silence stretches until I want to scream just to break it. Finally, he speaks. I need an heir. The bluntness of it makes me flinch. That's obvious, I say, then wince. I mean, of course, Your Majesty. He watches me for a beat, something flickering in his eyes that might almost be amusement. Every elder, every noble, every ambitious father in this pack has reminded me of that fact for years. They line up their daughters like offerings at an altar, each one more polished than the last. His mouth twists. Not one of them cares about the child, only the throne that child will sit on. I swallow. You think I'm different? It comes out harsher than I intend. We both know the council thinks I can't even give you that child. The council thinks many things. His gaze sharpens. They thought the outer rings would never matter. They thought Omegas would endure any abuse quietly. They thought a burning tenement was an acceptable loss. The fire pops, sending a small shower of sparks up the chimney. My fingers curl into my skirt. You keep bringing that up. Because it mattered, he says simply. To you, to me. I shake my head. Anyone would have gone in. No. His voice is quiet, but it pins me in place. I watched the patrol report. I spoke to the survivors. The ranked wolves at the scene weighed their own safety against the lives inside that building and chose to wait for reinforcements. He straightens, steps around the desk, and comes to stand at the corner, closer now, his presence like gravity. You didn't. I wasn't thinking about bravery, I mutter. I was thinking about screaming children and smoke. That's precisely the point. He moves to the window, looking out over the night-silvered rooftops, the faint glow of braziers in the distance. This pack is rotting from the inside, he says. Not because we lack warriors or land or resources, because the wolves at the top have forgotten that every life under their command counts. I find my voice somewhere under the weight of his words, then choose a Luna from among them and fix it. You're the Alpha King. You don't need me to. He turns, and the look he gives me stops the sentence in my throat. I have spent years watching those suitable candidates, he says. Do you know what I see when they look at me? I shake my head. Territory, status, a crown to wear like another piece of jewelry. He takes a step closer. Do you know what I saw when you looked at me in the hall tonight? I didn't. I wasn't trying to look at you. You did, he says. For one heartbeat, when I called your name. You looked at me like I was a blade about to fall. You weren't thinking about power. You were thinking about survival. Yours, your family's, the pups you pulled out of that fire. You were afraid of me, and you still stepped forward. My throat tightens. I stepped forward because refusing would have gotten my parents punished. I snap, because the council already made it clear how expendable we are, because I've spent 2 years being reminded I'm a mistake and I was too tired to run. Something in his expression softens, not enough to make him less dangerous, but enough to make him look almost human. Exactly, he says. I stare at him. I don't understand. He exhales, a slow, controlled breath, and returns to his side of the desk. This time, he doesn't lean on it like a barrier. He stands straight, hands resting loosely at his sides. I am not offering you a fairy tale, Vivienne, he says. There will be no romantic declarations, no songs written about this moment. What I'm proposing is a transaction. The word lands heavy. He continues. In public, you will be my Luna. You will bear my heir, if the goddess allows it. You will stand beside me when I drag this pack out of the pit the council dug for it. In private, you will have my protection, my resources, and my honesty. His gaze holds mine. In return, I ask for your honesty, your perspective, your unwillingness to look away when others suffer. A bitter laugh scrapes out of me before I can swallow it. You want me because I'm kind? The word feels ridiculous in my mouth. Because you are kind despite every reason not to be, he corrects. And because kindness in a world that rewards cruelty is a kind of strength my court does not possess. He's wrong, part of me insists. He has to be. I feel weak all the way down to my marrow. But another part, smaller and stubborn, remembers smoke in my lungs and the weight of a pup in my arms, and the way no one else climbed those stairs. And if I can't give you this heir, I ask quietly, if the council was right, if I fail, his jaw tightens. For a moment, the mask slips, and I see the man beneath the title The Fear there, cold and sharp as ice under thin snow. Then we will face that together, he says. I will not cast you aside. I will not let them tear you apart to prove themselves right. I search his face for a lie. I don't find one. That scares me more than the alternative. So I'm a business arrangement, I murmur. A strategic investment. Call it what you like, he says. But understand this. I chose you with clear eyes, not from desperation, not as a placeholder. I chose you because I need someone at my side who sees the wolves my council calls invisible. The room is too quiet. The fire cracks. Outside, a patrol howls in the distance, the sound thin through the glass. My life was supposed to be simple in its misery. Work, endure, fade. Now he's offering me a different kind of cage, one lined with power and danger and possibility. Do I have a choice? I ask. His answer is immediate. Yes. The word stuns me, more than his earlier command. He holds my gaze, unblinking. You can walk out of this room, he says. Return to the life you had. I will ensure your family is left alone. The council will scream, but they will obey. I will choose someone else, and the pack will continue exactly as it has. I picture my mother's thin shoulders, our leaking roof, the pups in the ashes of the tenement. And if I stay? My voice barely carries. Then we change it, he says simply. My heart beats once, hard enough to hurt. I don't know how to be a Luna, I whisper. Neither do I, he admits. But I know how to be a king. And I know you already know how to be more of a leader than half my court. Silence stretches between us, thick with smoke and fear, and something like hope. Fine, I say, the word shaking as it leaves me. Then make it a transaction. You get my honesty, my eyes on the places you don't see, my kindness, if that's what you insist on calling it. His mouth curves, almost, but not quite a smile. And you get? I lift my chin. The rejected Omega, bargaining with a king. It's absurd. It's impossible. It's happening. Protection, I say. For my family. For the others like me. Not just in words, but in law. In teeth. He nods once. Done. He doesn't offer his hand this time. Instead, he inclines his head, the smallest bow, as if acknowledging a deal struck between equals. Something in my chest loosens and tightens all at once. I came into this fortress as a mistake the council stamped with failure. I leave this room as a transaction, and somehow, against all reason, that feels like the first choice I've made in years. By the second morning, I learn there is no such thing as silence in the Alpha's fortress. If it isn't the distant clang of weapons from the training yards, it's the soft thud of servants' footsteps, the creak of old wood, the hiss of whispers that cut off whenever I turn a corner. Even my own thoughts don't stop. They spin and gnaw and replay the moment Severin said, "You will bear my child," until the words feel carved into the inside of my skull. "Up, Miss Solara," Margaret says briskly, throwing open the curtains before I can pretend to still be asleep. Cold gray light spills across the bed. "You have a full day. Breakfast, then your first tutors." "Tutors," I echo, sitting up slowly. The mattress is so soft my body still doesn't trust it. "For what? How to sit in a prettier corner?" Her mouth twitches, almost amused. "For how to be Luna," she says. "Or at least how to look like one. Up. The tea will go cold." By mid-morning, I understand what she meant. The first tutor is a tall woman with a spine like a spear and a mouth that was made to curl in disapproval. She introduces herself as Mistress Callian, Master of Protocol, and it takes her less than 3 minutes to decide I am a catastrophe. "Your posture," she snaps, tapping my shoulder blades with a thin rod until my back aches from being forced upright. "You slump like a dock worker. A Luna must occupy space with intention." "I've spent my life trying not to occupy space at all," I mutter under my breath. "Pardon?" Her dark eyes narrow. "Nothing, mistress. We spend an hour on how to sit, how to stand, how to bow without looking like I'm collapsing. Another on how to address visiting dignitaries, your grace, your lordship, alpha of this or that, names and titles that tangle on my tongue." She corrects every stumble with the same soft, relentless disdain. "No, you mustn't drop your eyes that far," she says. "Submissive, yes. Cringing, no. There is a difference. I didn't know there was." After protocol comes the master of household, a broad-shouldered man with ink-stained fingers and a ledger that looks heavier than some of the children in the slums. He walks me through the estate accounts, the rota for staff, supply chains for food and weapons and clothing. "You'll need to approve major expenditures," he says, turning the ledger so I can see the neat columns. "And hear disputes among the staff. They will come to you first, before the Alpha." "Why?" I blurt. "Wouldn't it be faster if they went straight to him?" He gives me a look that is not quite unkind. "Because some matters are better handled by a softer voice. And because that is what Lunas do." What Lunas do. The words follow me into the afternoon. By the time the etiquette tutor arrives, another woman in stiff black, armed with a tray of teacups and an expression that says she expects me to break all of them. I feel like my skull is too small to hold anything else. "Again," she says, after I misplace a spoon for the 3rd time. "No, your hand is wrong." Wrist loose, fingers relaxed, not clawed like you're about to stab someone. "Clawed is how my hands look," I say. My patience fractures at the edges. Like they worked, because they did. Her mouth tightens, but she doesn't rise to the bait. That somehow makes it worse. They all leave eventually, each one with a little huff or a sigh, the sound of tutors who have discovered a particularly stubborn stain that might never come out. When the door closes behind the last, I sag into the nearest chair and drop my head to the table. My skull throbs, my shoulders ache. Every correction, every frown, every small win immediately undermined by another failure circles in my head. "This is impossible," I tell the table. "I am impossible." "You are tired," Margaret's voice answers. I lift my head. I hadn't heard her come in. She's standing by the doorway with a tray, the smell of broth and fresh bread floating up like something sacred. Eat, she says. You'll think more clearly. I'll still be a disaster with a full stomach, I say. But my hands are already reaching for the bowl. The broth is rich, hot, better than anything I've eaten in months. It makes my eyes sting more than the tutors did. Did they overwhelm you? Margaret asks. Matter of fact, as she straightens a stack of books left crooked on the sideboard. That's one word, I say. I'm pretty sure Mistress Callian thinks my existence is a personal insult to chairs everywhere. And the etiquette woman would rather drink broken glass than watch me misplace another spoon. Margaret's mouth does that almost smile again. They're accustomed to molding polished stone, she says, not raw ore. I think they'd say I'm more like mud. She looks at me then, really looks, and whatever she sees in my face makes her expression soften. Mud feeds the whole forest, she says quietly. Polished stone just sits and shines. The words land somewhere deep and aching. I trace a pattern in the condensation on my cup. They all keep saying, a Luna does this, and a Luna must be that. I've never even met our last Luna. All I know is the council told me I could barely be considered a wolf at all. Margaret gathers the abandoned teacups with efficient hands. The last Luna was different from you, she says. Beautiful, regal, raised from birth to wield power with a smile and a whisper. She pauses. She did not know the names of the kitchen staff, or how much bread went missing to feed extra mouths. I think of the pups who used to gather outside the bakery at night, hoping for burned crusts, of slipping them half my portion, even when my own stomach clawed itself hollow. Is that what they want me to be? I ask. A smile and a whisper? That's what some of them want. Her tone cools. The council, certainly. They would be happiest if you were a lovely, silent ornament at the Alpha's side. Seen, not heard. And Severin? The name slips out before I can stop it. It tastes strange, his name in my mouth without a title. Margaret doesn't comment. The Alpha King brought you here knowing exactly who you are, she says instead. If he wanted an ornament, he had his pick of them waiting in the hall. I push the empty bowl away, my stomach warm and uneasy all at once. It doesn't feel like he picked me, I say. It feels like I'm trying on someone else's skin, and everyone in this place is watching to see when it splits. Of course it does. Margaret steps closer, setting a folded scrap of parchment in front of me. You went from the back wall of the throne hall to the top of the fortress in a single night. Your bones haven't had time to catch up with your circumstances. I unfold the parchment. It's a rough sketch of the fortress layout, corridors and staircases marked in neat hand, certain doors circled. I started with the routes you'll need most, she says. Your rooms, the study, the small dining hall, the gardens. We'll walk them until you could find them in your sleep. Once you stop getting lost, everything else will feel less overwhelming. I blink hard, unexpected emotion thickening my throat. Why are you helping me? Because the Alpha King told me to, she says crisply, then softer. And because I remember what it is to feel like you've been dropped into a story that was never written for you. The next days bleed into each other, a relentless march of lessons and walks through endless corridors. In the mornings, I learn how to pour tea without spilling a drop, how to accept a bow without flinching, how to layer my words so they sound polite even when they're edged in steel. In the afternoons, I trail Margaret through the fortress, meeting cooks and stable hands, laundry workers and groundskeepers. They look at me with curiosity, suspicion, open resentment. The new Luna, someone whispers when they think I can't hear. An Omega. It's a joke. It has to be. At council dinners, the elders sit stiff as carved statues, their disgust wrapped in impeccable manners. They address me only when absolutely necessary, and even then it's through Severin, as if I'm a decorative vase that occasionally speaks. Is the food to your liking, my lord? Elder Kalen asks one evening, ignoring the fact that I'm the one whose plate he's eyeing. Severin's fork stills. You may ask her yourself, he says. She is not a ghost. Kalen's jaw tightens. He turns to me with the grace of someone chewing glass. Is the food to your liking, Luna Vivienne? I force my shoulders not to hunch. Yes, I say, keeping my voice steady. It's excellent. Please compliment the kitchen staff. They work very hard. A faint flush creeps up his neck. He hadn't expected me to use the opening to lift them up. Their silent disapproval is its own kind of violence, a constant pressure that presses at the edges of my self-control. I go back to my rooms each night with my head buzzing from rules and roots, and a voice that keeps whispering, "You don't belong, you don't belong, you don't belong." And yet, every morning, I wake up and put on the dresses the seamstress made for me. I let Mistress Callian jab my shoulders back into place. I misplace spoons and learn how to correct it. I walk with Margaret until the fortress begins to map itself into my muscles. I still feel like an imposter, but the longer I stay, the more one small, treacherous thought claws its way through the doubt. If I'm already drowning, I might as well learn how to swim where they can see me. They warn me before he sends for me. Margaret appears in my doorway just as the last light of day bleeds out behind the fortress walls. I'm halfway through unfastening the dark blue gown Mistress Callian insisted I wear for an afternoon practice audience, my fingers clumsy at the tiny buttons. "The Alpha King requests your presence for the evening meal," Margaret says. Her tone is neutral, but her eyes are searching my face. In his private quarters, my hands still. Alone? The word feels dangerous, like a step onto ice whose thickness I can't see. "Yes." She steps inside, closing the door behind her. "I suggest you wear the green. It softens your shoulders." I look at the gown hanging over the screen. Deep forest fabric that makes my skin look less washed out, my eyes a little brighter. I'd liked it, until Mistress Callian mentioned it hugs the waist, too frankly for polite company. "He wants to talk," Margaret adds, as if she feels the panic starting to curl under my ribs. "Not parade you. Breathe, Miss Solara. You've faced worse than dinner." She's wrong, I think. I've faced hunger and smoke and the council's cold eyes. But Severin, alone, without the buffer of formality and witnesses, that's a different kind of danger. Still, I let her help me into the green. By the time I stand outside his door, escorted by a silent guard who smells faintly of oil and steel, my palms are slick. I wipe them on my skirt, then stop, remembering the lectures about wrinkled fabric. My heart thuds hard enough to make the narrow corridor pulse with it. The guard knocks twice, then opens the door at the low command from within. He bows and steps aside, leaving me at the threshold. "Come in, Vivienne," Severin says. His private suite is nothing like the echoing, polished rooms where the council meets. It's large, yes, but lived in. Books stacked on tables in uneven towers, maps pinned to the walls, some marked with sharp strokes of ink, others stabbed through with knives used as makeshift pins. A fire burns low in the grate, throwing a warm, restless light over everything. Near it, a small round table is set for two. No gold chargers, no crystal goblets, no stiff-backed chairs designed to make you feel on display. Just plain, solid wood, and plates of steaming food that smells like roasted meat and herbs and something yeasty and comforting. My mouth waters before I can stop it. Embarrassment flares hot on its heels. Severin stands beside the table, dressed in black as always, but without the heavy cloak or ceremonial clasp. The absence of those two small pieces strips away more than fabric. He looks younger like this, more tired. "Thank you, Garin," he says to the guard. The door shuts. We are alone. I hover just inside the room, hands knotted in my skirts. "Your Majesty," I say, defaulting to the only anchor I have. "Severin," he corrects. In private, my tongue stumbles over the name. "Severin," I manage. The sound strange and intimate in the quiet room. He gestures to the chair. "Sit. If we are to endure 1,000 formal dinners together, we should at least have one that isn't a performance." I cross the room slowly and lower myself into the seat. The chair is comfortably worn, the cushion bearing the imprint of long use. It feels like sitting in a space that belongs to him in a way the throne hall never did. He takes the opposite chair, and for a moment we sit in awkward silence, the crackle of the fire and the tick of the cooling metal on his armor stand filling the space between us. This is... I search for a word that doesn't sound like accusation. "Unexpected. I gathered as much from the way you looked at the door like it might bite," he says dryly. Heat creeps up my neck. In my experience, doors in this place rarely open on anything good. To my surprise, the corner of his mouth lifts. Not the sharp, calculated smiles he gives the council, but something small and almost reluctant. "Fair," he says. "Eat. We serve ourselves no hovering servants, no eyes counting how much I take. The food is simpler than what I've seen at council tables. Stew thick with meat and root vegetables, crusty bread still warm from the oven, a dish of roasted greens slicked with oil. This is what you eat? I blurt, then flush. I mean, sorry, that sounded honest, he says. Yes, for state dinners the kitchen sets out a show. For me, this is preferable. He breaks a piece of bread, steam curling up between his fingers. I have little patience for food that is more sculpture than sustenance. That makes two of us, I mutter, thinking of the tiny, perfect pastries I've seen pass by on silver trays. Pretty as jewels, about as filling. We eat in silence for a few minutes. The tension in my shoulders eases one notch with each bite. Hunger is a language I understand better than etiquette. It's hard to panic with warm stew in your mouth. Is it manageable? He asks eventually. I look up, confused. The stew? His eyes glint faintly. The lessons. Ah, manageable is a generous word, I say. Mistress Callian thinks I should be arrested for crimes against posture, and the etiquette tutor is personally offended by my relationship with spoons. His gaze sharpens. Are they cruel? Not exactly, I say slowly. Just efficient, precise. Like they're trying to file down all the edges until I match some shape they've already drawn. And how do you feel about that? He asks. I toy with a crumb of bread, rolling it between my fingers. Like I'm wearing someone else's skin, I admit, and everyone in this fortress is just waiting for it to split down the seams. He studies me for a moment. You are not here to become someone else, he says. If all I needed was a perfect Luna crafted by tutors, I could have chosen one years ago. You could have chosen one who wasn't declared barren, I say before I can bite the words back. The air tightens between us. He sets his spoon down carefully. Yes, he says. I could have. Then why didn't you? The question tears out of me, raw and sharp. Every time someone looks at me, I see it what they're thinking. That I'm a risk, a mistake, that you must be mad or desperate or both, and I keep waiting to wake up back in my old bed with a leaking roof and a headache from dreaming too hard. His jaw flexes. Do you want to go back to that roof? No. The answer is immediate, fierce. I surprise myself with its force. Then don't insult both of us by pretending this is some accident, he says quietly. I do very few things by accident, Vivienne. He rises, crossing to the map-covered wall. The firelight throws moving shadows over his back as he studies the lines and markers. Do you know what the council believes? He asks without turning. Many unpleasant things, I say. You'd have to be more specific. They believe this pack is unassailable, he says. Blessed by the moon, strengthened by bloodlines, protected by my father's victories. They think what we have is permanent because it has lasted so long. He plucks a knife from the table and uses the tip to tap a red mark on the map. Then another. And another. These are rogue attacks in the last 6 months alone, he says. Not minor skirmishes. Organized, coordinated. We've lost patrols, outposts, families. My spoon freezes halfway to my mouth. I heard rumors, I say slowly, but the elders said that it was under control, he finishes. That's what they told me, too, when I was a boy. Never mind that I watched bodies carried in. Never mind that I heard the morning howls for warriors too low ranked to mention by name. He moves the knife again, drags the tip along the border. The packs to the south and east have been holding talks. Alone they are gnats. Together, given enough time and our continued arrogance. He trails off. The implication hangs heavy. What does that have to do with me? I ask. He turns, leaning back against the wall, the knife still loose in his fingers. You understand what it is to be considered expendable, he says. To live where resources run out first and help arrives last. You see, wolves the council has never bothered to learn the names of. If I am to hold this pack together while we shore our defenses and root out rot, I cannot do it surrounded solely by those who benefit from pretending everything is fine. A bitter laugh scrapes my throat. So you need a conscience who knows how hunger feels. I need an ally who will not look away, he corrects. Someone who will tell me when the foundations are cracking in places my crown does not reach. Someone who is not dazzled by the power they stand next to. And you're sure that's me? I ask. What if this place changes me? Who's to say I won't end up like them? His eyes darken. Then I have misjudged you, he says. And this pack will fall, sooner or later, regardless of who sits beside me. We stare at each other. the space between us thick with things unspoken. Fear, responsibility, a thread of something else I don't want to name. You speak as if you're alone in this, I say softly. But you have an entire council, generals, advisors, an army. He sets the knife down, very carefully. I have men who want what power can give them, he says. Very few who see the cost it exacts. He hesitates, and when he speaks again, his voice is lower, the edges scraped raw. Everyone who comes to me wants something: land, rank, protection, a title for their offspring. They look at me and see a door they must push through, or a wall they must tear down. He looks at me, really looks, and I feel it like a touch. I am a king, Vivienne, he says. I am also a man, and it is a very lonely thing to be seen only as the former. My breath catches. I think of the first time I saw him, distant and untouchable, and the moment he called my name, and how my first thought wasn't he is powerful, but he is dangerous. How my second wasn't what can I take from him, but what will he take from me. I looked at you like you were a blade, I whisper. Yes, his mouth twists. You were afraid of me. You still are. I have reasons. I know. His gaze does not flinch. That is why I trust you more than I trust those who pretend they are not. Something shifts then, subtle as a change in the wind. The title between us feels less like a wall, more like a fact we're both choosing, briefly, to set down. So this is what this is, I say, gesturing between us. A king and an omega, having stew and talking about the end of the world. Something like that, he says. And the child? The words feel heavy. Is that just part of the strategy? His jaw tightens, but he doesn't look away. I need an heir, he says. For stability, for succession, for the wars that may be coming. But I also... He stops, searching for a word. I also want that child to know what it is to be looked at as a person, not a pawn. You think I can teach that, I say. I think you already live it, he answers. We fall quiet, the fire crackling between us. Outside, a patrol howls, answered by another, the sound rising and fading like a question. I came here thinking I was being turned into a symbol, a womb, wrapped in silk and paraded. Tonight, I see a different truth. He chose me because I know what it is to be powerless. He keeps me because he cannot afford to forget it. Fine, I say at last, my voice rough. Then we face your rogues and your hungry boarders and your scheming allies together. I pick up my spoon again, hands steadier. But if we're doing this, Severin, you don't get to pretend you're made of stone when you're not. His gaze flickers, startled, then settles. Agreed, he says. For the first time since I stepped into this fortress, I do not feel entirely alone. The news reaches me in pieces. First, a runner barrels into my lesson with Mistress Callian without knocking, chest heaving, eyes wide with the kind of fear you don't fake. He freezes when he sees me, darting a panicked glance between my face and the rigid line of Mistress Callian's back. Out, she snaps. You do not storm into the Luna's instruction as if, rogues, he gasps, ignoring her for the first time I've ever seen. At the eastern border. They've breached the wards. The Alpha King has been summoned to the war room. My heartbeat stutters. Eastern border. My home is east. I'm already on my feet. Which settlement? My voice shakes. Which one? He swallows. Multiple. They hit the river road, then swept down to the outer rings. We're still getting reports, but... Names, I cut in. I need names. He flinches. Solara Hollow is on the list of threatened sectors. The room tilts. Mistress Callian says something sharp and useless. I don't hear it over the roar in my ears. Solara Hollow. Our sagging roof. Our stubborn little garden clinging to life in rocky soil. My mother's hands, cracked and red from washing other wolves' clothes. My father's slow, limping gait from too many years of lifting what no one else wanted to lift. I move before thought can stop me. Vivienne! Mistress Callian snaps as I push past her. You cannot simply... Watch me, I throw over my shoulder. The corridors blur. Servants press themselves flat against the walls as I run, skirts fisted in my hands, the good green fabric be damned. The scent of fear threads through the fortress sharp, bitter, growing thicker the closer I get to the war room. 2 guards cross their spears as I skid to a halt before the heavy double doors. "Luna Vivienne, you can't enter," one says, sounding almost apologetic. "The council is in session with the Alpha King." I lift my chin, forcing air into my lungs. "Then they can make room," I say. "Open the doors." "We have orders." "From whom?" I demand. Because my last direct order from the Alpha was that anyone who questions my right to stand beside him answers to him personally. "Are you volunteering to test that?" They exchange a look. One pales, the other's jaw tightens. Then slowly, they lower their spears. The doors swing open on a wave of sound-raised voices, scraping chairs, the crackle of the big map fire in the hearth. "Breach at the eastern wards means their numbers are greater than we thought," Severin is saying, his voice like a blade across stone. "If we assume this is a probing attack, He breaks off as I step into the room. Council members line the long table, robes in deep reds and golds, every face turned toward the maps, spread like wounded animals across the wood. Little carved markers, wolves, towers, rivers, dot the territory. Too many are tipped on their sides. Elder Kalen's eyes narrow when he sees me. "This is a secure council." "Let her speak," Severin says, without looking at him. The room falls into a tense, expectant hush. I swallow hard. "Which settlements?" I ask, my voice thinner than I'd like, but still standing. "Exactly." Severin's gaze meets mine, and for once there's no mask between us. Just exhaustion, anger, and a sliver of something that looks dangerously like worry. "Rivers Bend was hit first," he says. "Then they moved south. Smoke has been sighted over Solara Hollow." My stomach drops. "Have they sent word?" "Not yet." "Then I'm going," I say. A ripple crosses the room, like I've dropped a stone into still water. Elder Kalen recovers fastest, of course. "Absolutely not," he snaps. "The Luna is to remain here where she is safe. We cannot risk." "You are not in a position to dictate my movements," I cut in, surprising us both with the steel in my tone. "My parents are in that sector. Our neighbors. The pups who play in the dust outside the bakery. If they're under attack, I am not sitting here practicing how to hold a teacup while they die." Kalen's face models. "You are not a warrior. You'd be a liability on the front lines." "I'm not asking to swing a sword," I say. "I know what I am and what I'm not. But I grew up in those alleys. I know every shortcut, every cellar, every field that floods when the river rises. I know where frightened wolves will hide and where they'll panic and run. You need someone who can get civilians moving before they trample each other, or run straight into a rogue patrol." A few of the generals exchange glances at that, their expressions grudgingly thoughtful. Severin watches me, hands braced on the table, knuckles pale. "The Luna's place is here," Kalen insists. "Visible, symbolic. If word spreads that she is running around the outer settlements like a common scout—" "I was a common Omega 2 weeks ago," I say. "Those wolves out there know me as that. They will trust me faster than they'll trust a line of armored elites who've never set foot outside the inner ring unless it's for a hunt." Silence. The only sound is the fire and the faint creak of the map shifting as the heat warps the edges. Severin's gaze shifts to one of his field commanders, a scarred woman with eyes like flint. "Commander Jarek?" She considers me, gaze assessing in a way that feels almost like a physical examination. "She's right," Jarek says at last. "Panic kills as many as teeth do. Someone who can speak their language, get them to move where we need them, that's worth a squad." Kalen rounds on her. "You cannot seriously be suggesting we throw the Luna into—" "I'm suggesting we use every asset we have." Jarek cuts in, bored with his outrage. "You wanted her to sit pretty and smile. The Alpha wants a Luna who does more than that. Make up your mind which king you're following, Elder." The air crackles. Severin straightens slowly. "We don't have time to argue protocol," he says. His eyes find mine again. "If you go, you will follow Jarek's orders as if they were mine. You will not break from the convoy. You will not take unnecessary risks. You are there to move civilians, not play hero. Understood?" Fear claws up my throat. The memory of smoke and falling beams, the weight of a coughing pup in my arms, the heat, my hands tremble. I curl them into fists. "Understood," I say. Kalen looks like he wants to hurl himself across the table. "Alpha King, this is madness. If she dies," Severin says, voice gone cold and quiet. It will be while doing something that matters, which is more than I can say for most of you. The council falls silent, cowed. Preparations move fast after that. Jarek barks orders, snapping squads into motion. A runner is sent to the healer's wing for emergency kits, a second for blankets and water skins. I barely have time to change into sturdier boots and a cloak before I'm being hustled down to the courtyard, the air alive with shouted commands and the metallic tang of weapons. Severin waits by the line of horses and wagons, speaking quietly to a lieutenant. When he sees me, something loosens in his shoulders. "You're late," he says. "You gave me 10 minutes to transform into someone who looks like they belong on a battlefield," I say, breathless. "This is the best I could do." His gaze sweeps over me, plain trousers under my dress, borrowed leather jerkin, hair braided tight back from my face. Practical, if still a far cry from the armored warriors mounting up around us. "You belong where you decide to stand," he says. His hand lifts, hesitates, then settles on my shoulder. The weight is warm, grounding. Stay close to Jarek. If she tells you to run, you run. "I thought you said no playing hero," I say, trying for lightness and landing somewhere nearer to shaking. He leans in, just enough that only I can hear. "Refusing to let you go would not make you safer," he says. "It would just make me feel better." That's not the kind of king I can afford to be. My chest squeezes. "I'll bring them out," I whisper. "My parents. As many others as I can. I swear it." "I know," he says. I turn to climb onto the wagon beside Jarek, but his fingers tighten briefly, stopping me. When I look back, the mask is gone for one bare heartbeat. All that's left is a man about to send something precious into danger and refusing to call it what it is. "Come back, Vivienne," he says softly. It's not a command. It's a plea, wrapped in armor. I nod, because my voice won't work. Then I pull away and haul myself up beside Jarek, the wooden boards rough under my hands, the horses snorting clouds of white into the cold air. The gates grind open. As we roll out into the night, towards smoke-darkened skies and the place that used to be my whole world, terror curls cold and sharp in my gut. But under it, quieter and no less real, something else pulses. For the first time, I'm not just surviving the decisions other wolves make. This time, I'm riding toward the fire on purpose. Smoke always smells the same, no matter where it burns. By the time our convoy reaches sight of Solara Hollow, the sky is a dirty bruise, streaked black where flames lick at the low clouds. The air tastes of ash and panic, thick enough to coat my tongue. Even from here I can hear its shouts, screams, the desperate, ragged sound of wolves running with nowhere to go. "Rogues are still in the outer lanes," Jarek says beside me, eyes narrowed as she studies the chaos ahead. We push through to the central square, secure a perimeter, then start pulling civilians out by sector. "You stay with me, Luna. No wandering off into burning buildings." The last part is said like she already knows I'm thinking about burning buildings. "I'll try," I say, because promising would be a lie. We roll past the first line of cottages. Some are untouched. Others are half-collapsed skeletons, flames chewing lazily at what's left. Shapes dart through the smoke. Warriors clashing with rogues, villagers running with bundles clutched to their chests, children wailing. Then I see it. Our street. The narrow lane where I learned to walk. The cracked stone step where my mother used to sit to sew, squinting against the sun. The leaning house with the patched roof that always looked one good storm away from giving up. It's on fire. "Stop," I choke. "Jarek, stop the wagon." "We can't," she snaps. "We need to reach the... My parents are there." My voice breaks. "Please." She curses under her breath, then jerks her chin at a pair of warriors. "You two, with her, get in and out. No heroics. If you're not back before we secure the square, I drag the alpha here myself to tan your hides." They nod, grim, and I'm already scrambling down from the wagon, boots slipping in mud and ash. The heat hits first, a wall that makes my eyes water. Our door hangs half off its hinges, smoke pouring from the gap. I cover my mouth with my sleeve and plunge inside. "Mother!" I shout, the word torn away by the roar of the flames. "Father!" The front room is an orange haze, the old wooden table already half charred, dishes shattered on the floor. Heat sears my skin as I duck low, heart hammering. "In here!" My father's voice hoarse from the back. I stagger toward it, shoulder slamming into the wall when the floorboard buckles under my foot. The tiny bedroom is a choking cave of smoke. My father is braced in the doorway, trying to lift a collapsed beam with shaking arms. Behind him, I glimpse my mother, huddled on the floor, her arm at a sick angle, coughing so hard it sounds like it might tear something loose. "Vivian?" She wheezes. No, get out. Not without you." I shove past my father, ignoring his shout, and jam my shoulder under the beam. It's heavier than it looks. My knees scream protest as I push up, teeth gritted. "Move." I manage. My father doesn't argue. He stoops, scoops my mother up with a raw sound from deep in his chest, and staggers past me. The beam bites into my back as I hold it, muscles trembling. The fire is everywhere now. It licks along the ceiling, greedy. The heat is a living thing, shoving against my skin, trying to force me down. "You can't carry a viable heir," the council voice sneers from some deep, remembered place. Weak, unstable, unfit. My legs shake. For a moment, I believe them. Then I remember 3 pups, soot-streaked and sobbing, clinging to my arms in another burning building. I remember the look in their eyes when the air hit their lungs again. I scream and push. The beam shifts. Just enough. My father shouts from the doorway, grabbing my arm and yanking me backward as the ceiling groans. We tumble into the hall just as the beam comes crashing down, a blossom of sparks and embers. My head cracks against the floor. Stars explode in my vision. Hands are on me, then warriors' voices. Jarek's barked orders, my mother's broken sobs. I try to stand and nearly black out, a sharp pain knifing through my side. "Luna, you're bleeding," someone says. I look down, dazed. A jagged plank has torn through the side of my jerkin, slicing the skin beneath. Blood wells, dark and too fast. "It's nothing," I say automatically, the words slurring at the edges. "We need to get them out. Others. There are others. There are medics in the square." Jarek's face swims into view, grim and set. "We're pulling everyone we can. You did what you came to do. Now you let us do our jobs." She hauls me to my feet, slinging my arm over her shoulders when my knees threaten to fold. The world tilts and lurches as we stumble out into the open air. My parents wait supported by 2 warriors. Around us, the village is a nightmare. Wolves running, rogues snarling, the clash of steel and the sickening crunch of bone. Somewhere in all that chaos, my feet keep moving. I don't remember collapsing. One moment I'm squinting against the smoke, trying to count the faces in the central square as more villagers are herded in. The next, the ground rushes up and swallows me. When I surface again, the world is quieter. The air smells of herbs and boiled cloth, the tang of antiseptic. My side aches in a dull, insistent way, wrapped in bandages that pull when I breathe too deeply. Light filters through thin curtains, soft and gray. "Healer says you're stubborn," a familiar voice murmurs from nearby. Not that this is news. I turn my head. Severin sits in a chair pulled close to the bed, elbows braced on his knees. His cloak is gone, his shirt streaked with soot and something darker. There's a cut along his jaw, crusted with dried blood he hasn't bothered to wash off yet. "You look worse than I feel," I croak. His lips twitch. "That would be more reassuring if you weren't currently lying in the healer's wing after passing out in a burning village." Memory slams back heat, smoke, my mother's coughing, the crack of the beam. I try to sit up too fast. Pain flares white-hot at my side, ripping a gasp from my throat. "Easy." His hand is there instantly, pressing gently but firmly on my shoulder. "You tore the skin deep. No organ damage, but you lost blood. The healers stitched you up. You'll be sore for a while." "My parents," I rasp. "Are they alive?" His voice softens, shaken, smoke in their lungs. "Your mother's arm is broken, but alive. They're in the ward down the hall." Relief crashes over me so hard my eyes burn. I blink quickly, refusing to let the tears fall. I don't trust what might come with them. "And the others?" I ask. "How many did we lose?" His jaw tightens. "Fewer than we might have," he says. "More than I can accept." I close my eyes briefly. The images are already there, waiting bodies on the ground, the too still shape of a pup in the street. The rogues, their eyes wild and empty. The way some of them laughed. "You saved lives," he says quietly. "Jarek told me what you did, the routes you picked. The way you got people moving instead of trampling each other. Solera Hollow would be ash and corpses without that. I also almost got myself killed," I say, very Luna-like. "You got yourself injured doing what half my council insists an Omega is incapable of," he answers. "Their faces when they heard?" He huffs something that might be a humorless laugh. "Worth a scar." I look away. A question has been gnawing at the back of my mind since I woke, sharp and strange. "Why am I here?" I murmur, one hand drifting toward my bandaged side. "And not in the general ward?" He's quiet for a beat too long. "The healers insisted on monitoring you," he says. "You lost more blood than they like." That's not an answer. His gaze drops briefly to my hand, resting just below my ribs. When he looks back up, there's something new in his eyes. Fear, hope. It's a volatile mix. "Vivienne," he says slowly. "The healer found something when she examined you." Everything inside me goes still. "Something," I repeat. My voice comes out flat. He swallows. "Very early," he says. "Barely detectable. But, there, a spark." His fingers curl around each other, knuckles whitening. "You're pregnant." The word hangs between us, enormous and fragile. For a heartbeat, I hear nothing. Not the faint clink of vials in the next room, not the murmur of voices in the corridor, just the echo of the council's verdict, rattling through my bones. Unfit for breeding. Barren. Defective. "That's not funny," I say hoarsely. "If this is some twisted attempt at—" "I don't joke about lives," he cuts in, sharper than I've ever heard him. "Least of all ones that might not have existed if I'd believed everything those fools in robes told me." My mouth is dry. I stare at him, searching for a lie, a hint of cruelty. I find only a man sitting very, very still, like if he moves, the air might crack and take this with it. "I could lose it," I whisper. "Omegas do, especially after burns and blood loss, and yes." His voice softens. "You could." The healer was clear. "It is a risk. For you, for the child." His throat works. "We will not pretend otherwise." "We," I repeat, quietly stunned that he used the word. "I will not," he continues, eyes locked on mine. "Allow them to turn you into a vessel they hover over with charts and predictions. This is not a council project. It is yours. Ours. If you decide the risk is too great." "I don't," I interrupt, the certainty shocking me as much as him. I decide I'm tired of letting them write my story before it starts." Silence wraps around us, thick and fragile. "You were there," I say, my voice shaking. "On that first day, when they told me I was broken, you saw what it did." "Yes," he says, the word is rough. "And I swore, right then, watching you leave that chamber with your shoulders too straight for someone whose life had just been carved apart, that I would never let them wield that power over anyone again if I could help it." I blink. "You remembered me, from then." He nods once. Something in my chest shudders. I'm scared, I admit, because the honesty between us tonight feels like the only solid thing in the room. Of dying, of losing it, of proving them right, of proving you wrong. "I am too," he says simply. Terrified. His mouth twists. "Don't spread that around. It would ruin my reputation." Despite everything, a choked laugh escapes me. It hurts my side. It feels good anyway. He leans back, exhaling slowly. "You are not a mistake, Vivienne," he says. "Whatever happens. You went into a burning house and came back out with more lives than you took in. You stood in front of my council and dared to tell them no. You walked into fire twice, tonight once in wood and once in choice." His gaze softens. "You are the wolf they misjudged." My eyes blur. This time, I let the tears fall. He doesn't move to wipe them away. He doesn't reach for me. He just stays there, a steady shape at the edge of my vision, a presence that anchors more than it unnerves. "We'll face this," he says, quiet but certain. "The rogues, the council, the child, if they stay, the loss, if they don't. Together." I close my eyes, one hand pressed over the bandage, over the faint, impossible spark beneath. For once, the word together doesn't sound like a lie. Recovery is a strange kind of prison. I'm not confined to bed, exactly, but every time I move too quickly, my side reminds me it was torn open not long ago. The healers fuss, Margaret hovers. Jarek visits once, standing awkwardly in the doorway, her eyes darting from my face to my bandages and back, as if unsure which part is most likely to explode. You did good work, she says gruffly. Finally. Try not to make a habit of using your body as a support beam. I'll put it on my list, I say. The fortress moves around me. Messages arrive hourly from the eastern settlements, lists of the dead, the missing, the saved. Rogues have pulled back for now, licking their wounds. Everyone knows they'll be back. Everyone also knows something else now. Whispers trail me like shadows when I walk the halls. Some are curious, some are odd, some are ugly. She went into a burning house, a scullery maid says as I pass, with rogues still in the street. Yes, and now they're saying she's carrying the air. Another answers in a hushed, disbelieving tone. An Omega. Can you imagine? I don't have to imagine. Severin told the council in private first. I wasn't there, but I can picture it. Their faces going slack, then contorting. Kaylin sputtering. Others calculating. Part of me had wanted to keep it secret longer. To hold the knowledge close, fragile and private. Part of me knew that was impossible the moment the healer wrote the word in her neat, merciless script. Pregnancy. The council responds the way they always do, with control disguised as concern. They send messengers with lists of healers, specializing in high-risk births, names of midwives whose loyalties lie firmly with old blood. They dispatch priests to my door with prayers about the burden of sacred duty. They propose limitations on my movement, couched in language about care and safety but edged with iron. Severin rejects each move with quiet fury. I hear about it from Margaret, who hears it from the staff, who hear it through doors not quite closed. He told them your body is not a council project, she reports one evening as she adjusts the pillows behind my back. Did they choke on their own tongues? I ask. Nearly. They don't give up. Of course they don't. They shift tactics instead. If they cannot control me through rules, they will try through fear. Warnings slip into conversations like poison into wine. Such a strain on an Omega heart, one elder murmurs, pressing a hand theatrically to his chest as I pass. We've seen so many unfortunate outcomes. So brave, another says with a lips-curled smile. To risk such a thing, almost reckless. They talk about me as if I'm not there, as if I'm already a ghost. I collect their words and stack them in my mind like kindling. I do not burn yet. I wait. Because while they circle, whispering and plotting ways to turn this to their advantage, something else is happening beneath their feet. The lower ranks are talking too, not in the council chambers or the velvet-draped salons, but in kitchens and laundry rooms and barracks. Omegas and gammas and low-ranked betas, wolves who have spent their lives being ordered and overlooked, are suddenly very interested in the idea that one of their own is carrying the future alpha. They don't all like me, but they can't ignore me. I use that. At first, it's small things. I linger in the kitchens after meals, asking the cooks about supply issues. I help a young Omega in the laundry room who dropped a basket too heavy for her arms. I sit with the healer's aides and listen to them talk about who comes in most often with injuries and whose bruises are never explained. Guard rotation is a mess on the south wall. A stable hand grumbles one day as I scratch a nervous mare between the ears. They cut our rations last month to fund new council carriages, but we're the ones patching holes in the pasture fences with scrap. I file it away. Priest Dernan has been slipping into the gambling dens again, a maid says as she kneads dough, hands working rhythmically, then preaching temperance in the morning. Hypocrite. Away. Kaylin met with a southern envoy at midnight 3 nights running. A young guard whispers when I catch him sneaking a nap in a hidden alcove I used to use myself. No record of it in the logs. That I do not file away. I write it down. At first, my notes are just scratches on scraps of parchment, names, times, places, little fractures in the surface of the fortress. Then patterns begin to emerge. Coincidence shrinks. Intent swells. Resource shipments lost en route to the outer settlements, only to show up stockpiled near estates belonging to council families. Guards reassigned from critical posts to escort duties for minor nobles. Rogue attacks that seem to avoid certain trade routes, while punishing others that have pushed for more independence from council oversight. Rats in the grain, one cook had said once, slapping a sack in frustration, chewing through things they didn't build. Rats indeed. I don't hide what I'm doing from Severin. When he comes to my rooms late one night, shoulders bowed under an invisible weight, I spread the notes out on the table between us. "You've been busy," he says, scanning the mess of ink. "I've been listening," I correct. "Like you asked. There's something rotten under your council's feet, and it's not just arrogance." His eyes narrow as he traces the connections. "Smuggling," he says, "diverted supplies, unauthorized meetings with southern envoys. If they're trading information about our border weaknesses, then the rogues aren't just probing us," I finish. "They're being guided." The muscle in his jaw jumps. "Traitors," he says, the word soft and venomous. "In my own court." "More than one," I say. "This isn't one greedy elder lining his pockets. This is coordinated." He sinks into the chair opposite mine, rubbing a hand over his face. For the first time since I met him, he looks his age. Younger, in a terrible way. Human, mortal. "They think you're not looking down," I say quietly. "That you're too busy staring at the horizon." "I was," he says, "until you came along and started pointing at the dirt on my boots." A crooked, painful sort of pride stirs in my chest. "What will you do?" I ask. "What I should have done long ago," he says. "Watch, wait, gather proof. Tear them out root and branch when they're too entangled to wriggle free. And in the meantime," I glance at the door, "they're not going to stop with whispers and midwives. If they can't control me, they may try to remove me." His gaze snaps back to mine. "They won't touch you." "That's not a promise you can make," I say gently. "Not without smothering me in guards and locking me in a tower. And you said you wouldn't do that." His hands curl into fists on his knees. "You are carrying." "I know what I'm carrying," I interrupt. "I feel it every time I wake up and wait to see if I'm still bleeding." I take a breath. "But if you turn me into a prisoner in the name of protection, they win. They make me small again, decorative, afraid." He looks like he wants to argue. Then he closes his mouth, anger cutting sharp lines into his face. "What do you suggest?" he asks. "Let me keep doing what I'm doing," I say. Talking to the ones they step on, walking the halls they pretend don't exist, gathering the threads. "Bait," he says grim. "Evidence," I counter. "If they move against me, they'll do it in the shadows, where the lower ranks see everything." We hold each other's gaze for a long moment. There's a war outside our borders, yes. But there's another one brewing inside these walls. Quiet and vicious. "You understand the risk," he says at last. "I live with it," I answer. "In my bones, in my blood. On this," I press my hand lightly against my still flat belly. "Hiding won't change that." He exhales slowly. "Very well," he says. We watch. We wait. We let them spin their web. "And then?" I ask. His eyes harden. "Then we set it on fire." In the days that follow, the fortress becomes a stage set for a play only some of us know is happening. The council continues their performance of concern. They send fruit baskets and prayer beads. They stop me in corridors to ask pointedly about my health, while their eyes flick to my abdomen with the hunger of wolves scenting blood. I smile. I thank them. I do not tell them that every conversation they have with their servants, every cloaked figure they let into side doors at odd hours, is being quietly noted by the girl they once declared invisible. At night, when the fortress quiets, the night it all breaks starts out too quiet. A storm presses low over the fortress, thick clouds smothering the moon. The air feels wrong, humming against my skin as I walk the corridor back to my rooms, Margaret at my side. We've just left a council dinner where the elders were a little too polite, their questions a little too careful, their smiles stretched too thin. "They're planning something," I say. "Yes," Margaret answers. "The only question is whether they're more afraid of you or of what you represent." I open my mouth to reply and the fortress shakes. A deep, distant boom shudders up through the stone, rattling lamps in their brackets. A heartbeat later, the alarm horn splits the night, long and jagged, the sound of every worst-case scenario made real. Margaret grabs my arm. "The outer wall," she breathes. "They've hit the gate." My pulse spikes. "Rogues?" "Not just rogues," she says grimly. Listen. Under the horn and the distant crash of impact, another sound rises, the frantic clamor of many voices inside the fortress. Shouts. Running feet. The crack of something heavy striking wood. An attack outside. Chaos inside. 2 wars at once. Go to your room and bar the door, Margaret orders. No. I shake my head, already moving. If this is it, they won't come for me where I'm supposed to be. They'll drag me there. I need to be where they don't expect. Margaret hesitates, torn between duty and understanding. In the end, she curses softly. Fine. The servant stares. Fewer eyes. We'll get to the lower hall and see where the damage is. We move fast, cutting away from the main corridor into narrow, familiar passages that smell of stone dust and laundry soap. The fortress groans around us. Another impact. Another horn. Closer this time. A distant, furious roar that can only be Severin. Shifting or shouting orders, I can't tell which. We're halfway down the servants' staircase when voices rise below. Through here, a man snaps. Her rooms are this way. The Alpha wants her secured. Does he? A second voice murmurs. Kaelin. I'd know that oily tone anywhere. Funny. The message I saw said we were to move her to the chapel. For safekeeping. My blood runs cold. Margaret's hand clamps around my wrist, dragging me back up 2 steps just as a group of men in council colors pound past the junction below. Not regular guards. Private forces, all in matching dark cloaks, insignia half hidden. If the rogues breach the inner wall, we'll have leverage, one is saying. The Alpha can't fight on 2 fronts if we hold his precious Omega and her little parasite. Parasite. My hand goes instinctively to my stomach. Margaret's eyes burn. We go another way, she whispers. No, I whisper back, a strange calm settling over me. Fear is still there, but it's sharp, focused. Let them go to an empty room. We need to get where the people are. Vivian. Severin is on the walls, I say. The council is sending knives into tunnels. Where do you think the pack will turn when they realize who opened the gates? Understanding flickers through her gaze. She nods once. We veer sideways, down a narrower stair, into the belly of the fortress. The lower hall is chaos. Servants rush in every direction, some with bundles of linens, others with crates of bandages and jars of herbs. A pair of young Omegas are trying to corral a cluster of wide-eyed pups into a storage room. Outside, beyond the thick doors, the sounds of battle pound like a second heartbeat howls, the clash of steel, the sickening crunch of bodies against stone. Luna! One of the Omegas gasps when she sees me. You shouldn't be here. Where else would I be? I step toward her, grabbing the door and yanking it wide. Get them into the old root cellar, not here. This room's on an outer wall. If it breaks, she blanches. I didn't think. It's all right. Think now. I gesture to the pups, who are starting to cry. Come on. Who wants to see where the fortress hides the good turnips? It's ridiculous. It works. They cling to each other and to my skirt as we herd them down the narrow corridor to a reinforced, windowless room I've only ever seen used for winter storage. Margaret helps drag sacks aside to make space. We shove in blankets, water, whatever we can grab. Stay with them, I tell the older Omega. No matter what you hear, you move only if someone you trust more than your own fear tells you to. Understand? She nods, pale and determined. We shove the door mostly closed, leaving it cracked just enough for air. Where now? Margaret asks. Up, I say. We climb toward the inner courtyard, following the sound of gathering voices. When we emerge into the wide stone space, my lungs seize. The sky above is a boiling black, lit occasionally by the flash of weapons. The outer wall is a jagged silhouette in the distance, swarming with movement. Closer, in the courtyard itself, knots of wolves cluster in frightened groups. Some are armed, most are not. The regular guard is spread thin, dragged toward the gates. Into that vacuum steps a familiar figure. Elder Kaelin, robes immaculate despite the chaos, stands on the broad stairs leading to the great hall. His voice booms over the crowd, amplified by fear and something darker. Brothers and sisters, he calls, the fortress is compromised. Rogues have breached the outer defenses. The Alpha King is indisposed. Lies. I stop at the edge of the crowd, Margaret at my elbow. We must act before his misguided choices doom us all, Kalen continues. He placed our future in the hands of a defective Omega. Now the goddess punishes his arrogance. We must secure the heir and negotiate safe terms before we are overrun. Murmurs ripple through the courtyard. Wolves look at each other, at the walls, at the closed gates. Fear is a beast with its own teeth. If we surrender that child, someone shouts, what makes you think they won't kill us anyway? We will bargain from strength, Kalen says smoothly. Blood for lives, one flawed life for hundreds. It is a regrettable necessity. Flawed, I whisper. The word tastes like ash. That's enough, Margaret hisses. We go back, find Severin, let him handle. He's on the wall, I say. They're down here. They think the pack will follow the loudest voice in the courtyard. I straighten, feeling something inside me click into place. Not courage, exactly. Something more exhausted, more certain. So we give them another option. I step forward. Or, I say, pitching my voice as high as I can. You could listen to the Omega you're trying to trade like a broken chair. Heads whip toward me. The crowd parts in a shuddering wave. Kalen's face goes stiff, then carefully blank. Luna Vivienne, he says. You should be in your rooms. I noticed, I say. So did the men you sent to fetch me there. Funny how their orders didn't match Severin's. A rustle. Eyes turn to him, then back to Kalen. We are in crisis, he says. This is not the time for what? I cut in. For the truth? For mentioning that before the rogues hit our walls, you met with Southern envoys 3 nights running in secret? That supplies meant for the outer rings kept going missing, only to show up in your allies' granaries? That you've been more interested in undermining your king than defending this pack? His face drains of color, then floods with red. You dare. Yes, I say. My hands shake, but my voice holds. I dare, because I was there when your expendable wolves bled in the dirt while you told them the goddess had a plan. I was there when you branded children with your verdicts like they were cattle. I lay a hand flat on my stomach. And I am here now, carrying the air you claimed I could never bear. Gasps, whispers, wolves shift, feet scraping against stone. You have no proof, Kalen snarls. I have names, I say. Times, witnesses. Do you really want to stand here in front of half the pack and gamble that none of the servants whose mouths you never bothered to notice will speak up? Silence falls. A kitchen boy near the back, barely more than a pup himself, takes a hesitant step forward. I saw him, he says, voice wavering but loud enough. In the south wing, with those strangers. I was told to keep my head down and my mouth shut. I'm done being quiet. A guardswoman adds, he ordered a patrol pulled from the east wall a week before the breach, said it was to escort a visiting dignitary.